Hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Coffee Chats. This time we are actually meeting virtual. As you might have read already recently in our newsletter, we both have traveled to Germany for Abby and South Korea for me. So we are connecting virtually again, just to kind of like keep up with our tradition of, convening this chat on a monthly basis and share a little bit more about what has been happening at Bin Voyage, what are some things that have been on our mind personally and professionally, and then finding ways to connect with you a little bit deeper each time. So welcome, Abby. It's again my pleasure to host this chat and interview with you. First of all, thank you so much for writing the newsletter with all of the updates and also with a really powerful note, at the end of the newsletter. How are you doing today?
Doing well. I'd say it's a Wednesday, and so Wednesdays are usually kind of that time of the week where you're kind of almost done with a lot of your big item things, but you still have quite a lot. And I find myself in a place where I still have quite a lot left. So I'd say I'm at a 3.5 because I see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there's still a lot more to be done, but generally doing well.
I'm happy to hear that. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing the updates. I think there were, as per usual, we shared 3 different updates and a couple of one challenges and then one ask, right? And I think I want to speak a little bit more about these updates. What among the 3 updates that you shared, and also perhaps some other updates that didn't make their way to the newsletter, what were you most proud of personally as one of the co-founders at Bin Voyage?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest updates from this month, and especially this last week, is that we're almost 50% into the care training program for this year, which always is really exciting because at the beginning of the year, when we're all sitting down to plan for it, it feels like it's going to happen at some point in the distant future, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the halfway mark. So that update was interesting even for me because I'm not very closely involved with the training process. So I'm not necessarily always following along, but it's great to kind of see that, oh, we've hit this 6 month or 6 weeks mark, and that we're 50% done with the program. So far, the feedback and the reviews that we're getting has been really positive, and it's been incredible to see the response of the producers on the 2 topics that we're focusing on around gender and community and climate change adaptation. And the first part was, of course, focused on gender and community, which is quite standard for almost all of our programs. And then the second part is really going to be focusing more on climate change adaptation. And having partnered with such incredible organizations this year, it's been really wonderful to see the kind of knowledge that we're able to bring to our producers. So partners from various local and international organizations, which, as a result of the partnership that Fernanda and Adri and Yusangi have built at the team, has really lifted the program, I think, to a very different level than even in the previous years, which really, really excites me, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, it's just kind of like crazy to believe that we are already past that halfway mark and already kind of like have head start really strong in our second module, and hearing a lot from our producers has been, I think, and facilitators has been, I think, really rewarding to all of us on the team. So yeah, thank you for the updates. And I think it wasn't necessarily directly addressed in your newsletter this time, but as I was mentioning earlier, we've recently moved, for you to Berlin and for me to Korea, right? What has been what has living in Berlin like for you? I think you've already been there for now 2 weeks, if not more. And obviously it's been like a home figure to you for many years in the past, but you haven't necessarily been back the way I think you have been back this time with the idea of creating a base, right? So what has it been like for you, and what are you looking forward to the most from your stay there?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a good switch from the kind of Bin Voyage question to a personal question. So I appreciate the question. I think the biggest thing I think in terms of transition and being funny enough, and in fact I have a little notes on my phone where I take notes of what I find different when I go from one place to another. Not something I do very regularly, but I do it when it's a big shift. And so the first day already coming out of the bus and public transport, I was already noticing a few things around languages and around the concept of personal space. I'm getting used to that because it's very different in Costa Rica. I don't hear Spanish as much. I actually hear a lot of different languages. So I'm hearing some Turkish and some Arabic and some Spanish, and then there's German, there's English. And so there's a lot of just mix of languages from around the world, which I think is something that I know both of us have grown up around, right? Especially the last decade. I think we've spent a lot of time hearing people who bring different cultures and languages being one example, but there's so many other elements that you get to notice. So that's something that I'm really enjoying for sure. Something that at first was very noticeable for me. I think the second thing that I'm really looking forward to, I think, is as we're establishing these kind of bases for Bien Voyage, also looking at what are some possibilities and how might we unlock some of these possibilities with our kind of capacities and skills. And so that's really the big goal for, I think, both of us. And I'm personally looking forward to building deeper relationships with our partners in Europe. At this point, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sangi, but I believe our biggest kind of buyer communities are based in Europe. Some of our biggest supporters are based in Europe. And so looking forward to really building and fostering some of that relationship so that they have a stronger connection with our mission and our work and the partners that we collaborate with in Costa Rica. So I think very much looking forward to all of that. And then the final piece that I would add is definitely looking forward to cycling more. I think so I got a new bicycle, which I'm really excited about. And so I don't know, like maybe 12 years ago or something, I got really interested in cycling. As a kid, of course, cycled as well, but I think there was a time period when cycling was such a big part of life, and even in college I used to have my little nice fancy bike. And I think the last 5 years or so, because of that transition which both of us have had, owning a cycle is out of the question. Funny, I was mentioning owning a nice pillow was out of the question because they're always transitioning, and so it didn't make sense to carry a pillow with you. There are a few things that I'm excited about, which are quite quirky, but I'm sure you would understand, Cindy, for sure. So I think those things I'm looking forward to as well.
Thank you. I think, yeah, I relate. And I think there are a lot of things that we are also really excited about. And I think we are also chatting a little bit about this new transition and what it would mean for us. And also obviously for Bien Voyage, when I meant us, right? As in like how how is everyone's role going to be shaped because of our choices to move away from living in the headquarter, the country where the headquarter is based, etc. I think in general, though, as I think you were sharing, there are a lot more opportunities that we could definitely bring back for being outside Costa Rica, and also, being based in places where we are able to bring Bien Voyage a little bit closer to the people that are consuming it and enjoying it, and so forth. And obviously, like while having a really strong base and strong team on the ground, and kind of seeing more of that local leadership. And I think has been something that we have been really excited about, if I can speak on our behalf also. So yeah, for anyone that might be curious, yeah, thank you so much for providing us with that context for sure. And I think I realized a lot more people when they're watching these coffee chats are more interested in us having conversations outside these updates, because I think we are quite regular in sharing updates regarding our programs and organizational elements. So my last question to you, if there isn't any that come up in my head later on after you answer the question, is to have you unpack a little bit more about what you shared in your personal notes. I think what you reflected there about the design thinking and also the system change, for me was really insightful, because I think you In specific, you've also mentioned how design thinking is usually, like designing this quote unquote solutions for a client that you're trying to like help, or building that system, like a systemic change, right? And oftentimes we might only be thinking about the client as a person or an organization that's paying. And I think, however, in your personal note, you've mentioned about the environment being one of our biggest clients. And for our case, oftentimes our clients are coffee producers, not oftentimes, almost all the time, that are actually not paying to be part of the program. So like the payment gets kind of like separated from our thought process when we're going through the design thinking, right? Can you unpack a little bit more about what you were thinking about, what went into your head to be like writing this beautiful reflection for all of us?
For sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think so this weekend or this last weekend was elections in Germany. And I happened to be here during a pretty historic place or historic time, I guess, in this sense. And I was able to go and observe the polls, quote unquote, really just seeing it from an outsider's perspective. And it was interesting for me to see how smooth the whole process was. And I'm going to caveat by saying that's not true for everyone who voted, and I'm sure there were people that waited in long lines. I just got to see a very effective polling station, but it was quite unique to see how structured the systems were, how there were people put in place to make it easy for citizens to be able to vote, right? And so it helps that this past month I've also been co-facilitating a design thinking course. I'm thinking a lot about putting the client at the center of everything that we do, and so the client in this case being the voters and the citizens, and putting them at the center of it. Everything else is around making sure that every citizen has the smoothest experience in voting, right? There are other structural things, systematic things around the fact that elections will always take place on Sundays. So it's a public holiday. There are other systems that are placed by the government. But at a very micro level, even at a polling booth level, there were things that were structured and organized so that people could smoothly go through the process of voting. And this is a country that has a pretty high rate. I think it was about 67% turnout in the previous election, and I believe this time it's going to surpass. And so there's a reason why so many people are engaging in democracy, right? And then it made me think about how oftentimes when we talk about design thinking, we talk about human-centered design thinking. And I wonder if there's a possibility, and I'm sure many other organizations are thinking about it now, is I wonder if we can remove the human-centered piece and basically make it client-centered design thinking, and then really open it up to the environment, open it up to our ecosystem, so that a lot of what design thinking does can be implemented for the wildlife and the nature. And in many cases, I think in our case, it's focused around the people and the planet that produce our favorite morning beverage. And that includes smallholder women coffee producers, and that includes the planet and the soil and the plants where coffee comes from, right? And so a lot of that thinking, it's still kind of scattered, but a lot of that thinking is, I think, pushing me towards the direction of wanting to learn a bit more about design thinking and its possibilities of putting different individuals, but also organizations and organisms in the center of it. And I hope that that's something that we can unpack, especially I think because now Bean Wedge is becoming more and more focused on some of these issues around climate and food security. And so how can we put the interest of the people on the planet that we're designing for at the core of it, so that they have as smooth of an experience as people in Germany had while they were voting last weekend. So scattered thoughts. I don't know if I answered your question, but just, yeah, something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for sharing. And I think you absolutely did, because I think my question itself was, what were you thinking about when you're writing it? So I think you really did share what has been occupying, space in your brain, and what have been really like what you have been engaging with actively. And I think you brought up really interesting points, especially because I think some people, I think, will just kind of put a bracket around what we do as a coffee business. And oftentimes I think we tell ourselves, and I think a lot of what we do actually are not always related to just coffee. And I think coffee has been a product that has been holding everyone that is related to
Mhm.
Pinot kind of together, through the livelihoods that it's able to create for so many different people around the world. However, I think most of our work actually lie outside that, right? Like a commodity itself, in a way that we talk a lot about the environment elements, the gender gap, and all of the elements that are around coffee, and how it's always requiring us to look at it from like the intersectional view. And environment and class issues and all of that can't be necessarily removed from any of the work that we do. So I think that design thinking process could be really interesting for us to also one day sit together as a team when we are actually able to meet together earlier next year, to actually unpack it a little bit more. That will be, I think, really interesting. I think we always kind of like use some techniques from it, but then I think just kind of like officially calling it also as like a design thinking, but rather than human-centered design. I think I really like the different the shift in the perspective of like it has to be beyond that human category, and has to involve and include the ecosystem. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, so I think with that, I don't know if there was any other comments that you wanted to share from September's updates, and also maybe some final words from you about what you're excited about in October. And with that, maybe we can close the coffee chat for today, for this
For
month.
sure. Yeah, no, for sure. I think the thing that I'm really excited about, and that's going to happen in a couple of days, is the food basket initiative that we've launched over the last few weeks in partnership with the Starbucks Foundation. And this week is the delivery of the first set of baskets. And so it's really exciting because that program, which has been wonderfully led by Maria Jose and Adriana, is really kind of taking its shape in terms of being a program that is providing some of that immediate relief that people are needing because of COVID. There are some really stark data that has come up from our process of recruiting about 100 by recruiting 100 farmers into the program, and we've seen some really stark data around not just food security, but also general economic livelihoods in coffee producing communities. And so this is really providing that immediate relief, and will provide that for the next 6 months, at the end of which we're going to be providing not only a micro grant for them to be able to actually implement some form of project, food security project, but also be providing some form of training on food security initiatives. So it's a really exciting project, something that we're probably going to unpack a lot more in the next 2 months, because it's really in the early stages. But this week and October 1st is the day that the first round of baskets are going to go out. So really looking forward to that. And I think I'm really excited and really want to take a moment to thank everyone that's actually donated to the program last year. We ran a campaign during the height of COVID, I think April, May, I think June as well. And quite a lot of you actually contributed, especially during a time when the economy was probably not as stable. So really want to thank you for that, because as a result of that, we're now able to, I think we started with about 27 families and now are able to deliver the same service to 100 families. So yeah, just a lot of appreciation and gratitude for everyone for contributing and always being so engaged. And yeah, wishing you all a wonderful October.
With that, we will end today's coffee chat. Thank you so much once again for joining us once again this month. And we look forward to sharing more updates more regularly through our social media. So we'll see you next month. Bye.